All right, we are welcome to this episode, if you call it, of editing headshots with my certain branded look. My name is Ron Accord, and I'm going to show you just how I would like these headshots that are shot on white. This is one I did yesterday, just to give a little bit of reference. This is where we're start out at, and I'll show you kind of where we're going. And here, shot previously there, I edited previously, and I'm going to show you how to get this backgrounded look from the shot on white with not having to have a window. So there's several steps in the process, and many things to factor in to tie it all together, and I'm going to walk you through the process of editing this image, even with hair that's oh no, we're not going to be able to edit that out, or a lot of masking and so on and so forth. It's a lot easier than you think, and the less hair the easier, obviously, but don't let this hair frighten you. Even really light and blonde hair, it's all workable. So let's get started here. We have a couple of resources. We're going to have this PSD file that's full of what you could see as backgrounds. Okay, and then of course this little layer right here, this is like the sauce. This is a series of elements. They all kind of tie together. These last three are just for overall, and then this curves is for the eyes. The blue is to paint out, to have like a little bit of a branded blue that's in the image, but just not on the skin. That's where we'll be masking out where the skin is. This is for highlights for the sun, and this is just a slight blue in the opposite side. And I'll show you what all that is in just a second. So we're going to go back to this image, and I'm going to duplicate this layer. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to cut this out here. You may already know, or I may be refreshing you, but this is just the way that I want it done. Duplicate. We're going to duplicate all these layers inside this, all these backgrounds, and we're going to bring it over to our current file, and I'll show you why. We're going to take this image, we're going to put it on top, go ahead and turn off this branded, so we have all these layers behind our duplicated layer, and turn off this one. And this is, I'll tell you in a little while, but we'll choose the background based upon just the way that she is, and sometimes I like other backgrounds versus another. I just like to include them all, and eventually we will get down to one. So have this layer selected on top. Go to our quick selection tool, this little smart thinking one, and we're going to just pick her. It should look pretty easy, and just a little bit of the outlying hair. I think we're good here. Don't worry about this hair right here. We'll get that in a second through the select and mask tool. This is the tool we're going to be using. And select and mask, click at the top. Now, an important element here is in your output settings on the right side, we have something called decontaminate colors. And some people may tell me, well, don't use this, or it's not, I don't know. This is the best way to cut people out of a background. This is the secret sauce right here, and I was a little worried that it wasn't available in later versions of Photoshop, but I found it. It's in there. And what you'll see is, right now it's a little bit edgy here on the hair, but immediately street cut out away pretty good around the shoulders. If you turn that off, you can see the white line that's on there, and it goes away with the decontaminate colors. This is good. Okay, so let's start here at the base, and we're going to start painting in back this hair, and I can show you on the views, on layers. The reason why I have my background in there is because on layers I can see exactly what it's going to do to one of my backgrounds. And so if you click on black and white, you can see what we're doing here and see how it cuts out the hair. And several years ago, this just was not possible. It just was not. And then when Selected Mask came out with newer version, and it allowed you to decontaminate color, which adds like minded color to the area instead of just white craziness all around your subject's hair, especially with dark hair. It's a nightmare. That's the secret. So let's just keep painting this, and you can kind of see how I'm black and white. I don't always just switch back and forth, but just so you could see how we're grabbing some of this hair. It may take just a little bit to load that, depending upon your graphics card, but it's not overwhelming. You don't have to go too much. We'll paint back some of that in a second later on, and I'll show you later, but you can see how that's just kind of painting in, go to the edge, and some of the inside of the hair. Okay, looking good. And some of this hair we will mask out later. So we're just going to grab some of this. Okay, and then when it comes to areas like this, we're going to fill this in anyway but go ahead and let's go ahead and paint that guy. Areas that are close. When I shoot these, I try to not have the hair fan out to the edges. I try to keep everybody's hair just as, for this particular look, this window look, close to their neck as possible, either over the shoulder or behind it, not too much where it's fanning out to the shoulders, because then it just starts to look a little odd when you're trying to cut out. But with our particular person here, if your hair is just at your shoulder length, then you just kind of go with it for what it is. And I think in another episode I may be able to show that a little bit better. This is one of my first podcasts. Let's see if we can do this right. Okay, so pretty good, and I can show you on, not really on there. Pretty good so far. That was fast. Okay, now output 2. If you look here, you want to go new layer with layer mask. New layer with layer mask. Okay, hit OK. Now, what you're going to want to do, since we duplicated this layer and it has the decontaminated color built into it, you can see that you can see all of our craziness kind of that's in there. You're like, ew, gross. But turn that back on. Take both of these layers and go Command G to group it, or you could just make a new folder and put both of them in there. Take this layer, take the mask, put it on the folder. We're going to take the bottom layer that was the original, and we're going to put it on top of the one we created. Put it on top, turn it on, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do a reverse mask. Turn that on. Now you may be thinking, well, why'd you do that? Now what we can do, since nothing's there right now, as you can see, for the edges of the hair, you're going to want to go back in, and with your brush selected and the white, you're going to go back in and, come on, this isn't working. Okay, size, come down. Sometimes my brush gets a little bit finicky. I don't know why. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so I'm going to kind of paint back in. You might not be able to really see too much. Watch this right here. See how some of that's coming back in, that detail's coming back from the hair. So paint this back, and so therefore it leaves the edge that we were able to pull the detail from, but then paints back her hair so it blends nicely. And then when it gets into these other less focused areas, just be kind of careful with it and just kind of blend it together. This looks fine to me. Just kind of use your best judgment to, some areas just don't see like that. It just doesn't really need it. Kind of see how your white starts to come back in. So you just don't need it as much. So just be careful on your blend. Looking pretty good. Now, awesome. Great. That's a cutout so far. Now, I'm going to kind of go around. I like to do cleanup in a couple of different ways. So, If you have Portrait Pro, you can do it that way. It's obviously, I'm talking about a secondary plugin. It's a great plugin. I'm on a different machine right now, but I have a couple of different presets that I have that are very light. The thing about Portrait Pro is you can easily overdo it, and you have to be really simple, really careful. Just stick with the skin and the little the areas around the eyes and so on and so forth to lighten this area. But since I'm gonna do straight Photoshop, and I'll show you a little bit of how I clean this up. So we're gonna go to our spot healing brush right away, and just to begin with, I'm gonna grab some of these just leftover hairs. Some people I used a lint roller on, some people I didn't. This particular shoot, I did not have my lint roller because I forgot it. But that's okay. I can usually take care of people pretty easy. Yeah, that was a little bit muddy. Okay, we're almost pretty easy. You don't have to go nuts here. You can get some of that in our frequency separation if we have to in a second. Some of this is a little discolored. Okay. Very good. And then some of these I may straight out of the gate just because I see them, maybe because I'm OCD and I want to start out not immediately in the way. You're right, I could do this all in frequency separation if you're thinking about that, but we will get to there. Okay, now sometimes the way that my frequency separation plays the action, and if you know the difference and getting it to work with any layer or any spelling, you let me know. But I always have to, if it's not flattened, I duplicate the layer and I bring it into a new file just for begin with the layer we actually edited. So grab that one because it's on the bottom, and we are going to you could probably just rename it, but flatten it's probably just fine. We're going to go to our frequency separation action. If you don't have your action loaded, go to up here, this little drop down, they call it a hamburger. Click on that guy, go to load actions, and then load your it's going to be this frequency separation 2. And also the sharpening will be this sharpen folder here. So if you load that, that'll come straight in. Drop that down and hit play. Okay, we're gonna see this. Great, just made that frequency separation. We're gonna duplicate this back to our file here. Don't need this anymore. We're gonna close this guy. And then, okay, this is what I want to show you. We're going to go down to here to our low frequency. This is just a the breakdown of this is linear light and 2 different layers in the Gaussian blue. I don't want to get into too much of frequency separation. There's great tutorials out there, but this is how it's basically set up. We're going to go in here. We're going to start with our low frequency blur here. With a feather up here at the top of about 20 or 23. We're going to select our areas. I always start with the forehead area first, just because that's just a creature of habit. I'm going to go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, somewhere around about 23.5 is fine. You don't want to go too much. You want to keep some of it there, but not overwhelming, because obviously that's not going to work. Probably values over 100 are probably a bit too much. 45, so go 23, 23.5, something like that. Okay, and so you can immediately see. Let me go forward. And a little Gaussian blur there. Just kind of smoothing out the skin. We're going to go here to the cheek. I like to do the cheek and under the eyelid. bit there, and I'll do the chin separately. And you can just use that same Gaussian blur that we've already done because it's saved in the memory there. Okay, let me go to the chin. Normally I'm doing this much faster than I would, but I'm explaining it, trying to make sure that I'm communicating this clearly. And so around the nose, I like to do the Gaussian blur, but then do a Control-Shift-F for fade, and we're gonna bring that back to like 25%. So it's just a little bit, but not a lot. Maybe like somewhere around in there. Okay, now, important thing to remember is the neck, because a lot of times we look at the face and then we forget the neck. So we're gonna do the neck here. And this we won't do as much, kind of like the nose. Just kind of play it by ear. I'm gonna go Gaussian blur here. Great, and we're gonna go back to the fade. And we're gonna pull that back down to about half. OCD, I know, 50. And we're gonna come here, maybe even just a little bit less, 45. Okay, hit okay. Now, not bad, not great, we're getting there. Much better and different. Straight out of the gate, this would be acceptable for someone. And now our frequency separation, we're gonna go to the high frequency. You're gonna come up here to our healing brush, not our spot healing brush, but our healing brush. And what you do is you select little areas around the area that you want to take out the blemish with your Alt button to sample. You can sample with Alt. And for the sake of this particular tutorial, I'm not going to do a lot. In fact, I'm only going to do light retouching because that's not all the time. Especially if, like I said, mentioned earlier, if you're using something like Portrait Pro, you can clean up with that, and that's just fine too. There are also many times where somebody is maybe not as old, and you don't have to do nearly as much cleanup. Or, don't tell this lady I said that though. Okay. Come in here just a little bit, sometimes around the mouth. Just a little bit. Okay, and the lip, just a little bit around this. To my retouching friends out there, don't scold me. This is just enough. Okay, you get the idea. If you're watching this video, you are probably beyond the knowledge of retouching, or if not, this is a pretty simple process, and you're just kind of cleaning up from a bunch of little areas. All right, let's move on from that from now, and maybe we'll come back to that. Next step is the ThyssenKrupp, or not ThyssenKrupp, my branded sauce here. We're gonna go drop this down. Click on the blue first, this little layer here, blue effect, and you see everything is blue. Okay, we're going to click to our black, and we're going to paint the skin out. Okay, right here. And it's okay to go a little bit on the clothing too and just kind of paint it back in. Usually don't go over the hair, like all the way over, just kind of to that edge, even though I am kind of going there. Okay, paint that back. Okay. And then paint in just a little bit. You might even take the value of your brush down. Just kind of blend it a little easier back in, so it's not just like this little warm line that's there or whatnot. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, for the curves too here, this little curves is really for the eyes. So at 100% or whatever, you can just paint this in. It just brings a little bit of a pop back to the eyes. I always drop in one like right there by the nose for the way that I shoot this particular style. Just, I don't know, I just feel like it needs it. Under the nose, just a little bit there. And we got this little, this warm here. I'm gonna take this down, my value down to like 2 or 3 or something like that. 3%. I'm gonna paint this, her shoulder there, just to give it a little bit of a light, sunlight coming in. Let me paint that a little bit back out, but just leaves it a little bit on the edge, or a little rim light. This blue, same thing, just a little bit. It's not even a lot. You probably don't even need it on this one, but it's there. Just cool and warm in an image, just like the movies, like you see in those tight shots. Cool and warm. Okay, that's pretty much it for that. Your vibrance is in here, just to bring out some of the colors, contrast, a little bit of contrast and selective color. This is just adds a little bit of a blue to the overall. This is fine. This is fine just as is. Okay. Now, we could from here go a little bit more on our frequency separation, but for the sake of, I'll do a little bit more. Okay, and in different areas you would need to, I mean, you could literally spend a while in here. You spend an hour just doing frequency separation if you wanted to. For the sake of this, turn this off. This guy, click on the folder if you were going to add some sharpness to the image, and then if you want to clean up more, you can always add this later. We're going to duplicate the layer, just because this is the one we've primarily worked in. We're going to merge the group. We're going to go up to our sharpen folder here and go to a value of 4 or maybe 6, depends on the person here. We're going to click that. We're going to play. This is just a sharpen, high pass sharpen. Great. And you could delete this guy now. So now you have this guy to work with, and you just have a sharpening pass on top. See that? The value of that. See, 6 would have been probably a little bit too much. And if you really want to go crazy, you can just paint in just the areas you want, like the eyes and so on and so forth. But I think it's fine. And then that's about it. So what we'll do is we will select. Actually, that background's kind of nice. This one's kind of nice too. Some of these are, since this is a lower res file, these aren't coming in as big, so you'll notice that these are kind of big here. And a lot of them would just move up. It's kind of funny how you don't see them at a certain level, scale, and you see them at different scales. You're like, oh, that looks kind of nice. Nope, that's not going to work. See, some of them, the colors in the background just straight away don't work, so you can kind of hide a little bit of the value inside these images here. Let me see something. I'm going to go here. I think I might like the first one, just straight out of the gate, the one we were working with. but you get the idea. Let's just stick with that for now. These two until I decide. Last thing, or hopefully the last thing, I've been saying last thing a lot. Go back here to your opacity, turn that brush up, and we're gonna paint just a little bit. You could turn that opacity down if you wanted to, like 60 if you want. And kind of paint in these little, paint out those hairs. We're just kind of there. This is fine. You can go 20 and just, no, not 2. Let's paint out some of that just so it kind of blends. Hair that's just kind of flaying out there. You be the judge. It doesn't have to be a perfect line or a perfect cut, a little bit of a blend. Even this is probably just a little bit too soft, but that's okay. This right here is a little bit problematic to me. And I think this guy is probably completely needs to go. And we will just cut it off right here. I'll get to the shoulder in here in just a second, just to double check. We're probably good on this image, even though you can kind of see an edge a little bit there. And then maybe this guy too. Hold it there. I'm kind of figuring this out with you, seeing how I want to do this. In that situation, don't necessarily feel like you got to paint it back, because then you have to deal with the white. Just kind of Control Z if you got to go back. If you got to change your brush to a different brush, if you got them. Those are great, little detail brush you may have or something like that. I may not supply this to you, sorry. Or any detailed brush will kind of just give you a little bit of that, just like that, not so uniform, soft edge. This brush is this little smoke detail that I've had this architectural brushes for such a long time. I just know this brush really well, and I just like it. This guy right here, probably. Boom. Not bad. Not bad. Now some of these images, some of this right inside here, sometimes it doesn't quite do it. You can just kind of see it and your eye just draws to it. Sometimes you, turn off your branded color, turn on the clone stamp, and go to all layers, And you can easily just kind of paint this over the top of this. I mean, you could always put this layer inside this group, and then you'd have to paint that white out. You could do that just for cleanliness here, but this is just easier just for demonstration. Just kind of paint this back. Just kind of borrow from here. Just to kind of take out some of that some of the hair, some of the light that's bleeding through the hair, so it just makes it a little bit more. That's too much. Believable, you know. Same thing with this. You can go like that, even though it's believable. With the hair, it could be a little distracting. You can kind of see, sometimes you can kind of see your own work you might have missed. Go back to the hair, see this little, some of this guy in here. Kind of paint the little decontaminated color back. If it's too distracting, just paint the whole thing back in. This darker color, and I think it'd be totally fine. Excuse me. I'm gonna leave that, I think. That's a judgment call on you. You're in. I might just leave that. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, great. Now that's pretty much it. I might paint some of this hair back in and kind of blend this hair together, blend some of this work so it's a little bit more full. I might dial back some of this lip and a little bit on the teeth, but that is the essence of this image. That it would be good enough for edits. This is how you cut out the background of shooting on white with a lit background, just either shot at, or some of those boxes that are a giant, big enough softbox where you could just have literally a softbox pointing at the back of someone. But this will work just fine, and I've done this hundreds of times, and this is the element that works. The decontaminated color is the secret sauce, so now you know. Just follow this guide and you should work. Thanks for tuning into this video, and I will do a couple more demonstrations if need be. They're not as long, probably about half the time.